I first get a script, I break down every character. So one by one I go through the script and I break down everything that character does. It really helps me to get the script into my head. I even do it kind of still pen to paper. I just find like doing it the long way really helps it to go in. And then yeah, you can arc the kind of the map of the journey for the character. And then see where you can change things in terms of hair and makeup and add to that character's journey. Costume is always a big, I would say director first, just to get the kind of gauge of their vision. And then after that, costume is a huge kind of ally. And to see where they're going with things, particularly if it's period as well, because it has such a bearing on what we do. And production design as well. I always think that's really, particularly for colour, colour of rooms and that. You don't want to dye someone's hair bright red and then they're always going to be in a red room or that kind of thing. So everybody really, all the HODs are very integral to that. And then really after that, the actors are the biggest thing, because you can sometimes come up with an idea and show it to the actor or try it on the actor and it just doesn't work, and so you have to go back to the drawing board and start again. Or equally, you might have seen someone as being a brunette and then the cast member comes in and blonde. It's like, oh, hang on a minute, I need to go back to the drawing board with that. The favourite is everything all rolled into one, so it ticks every box. It's a period piece. It's a period that doesn't get done very often, but then you've got a very art house director with that. You've then got huge stars in this. So all of those things combined were so exciting, but also completely nerve-wracking. And also because Yorgos is just a complete, one of his own really. And if you've watched Yorgos Lanthimos films before, you'll know that it's not going to be a standard period piece. It's not going to be not hair out of place and everything perfect. And so from my very first discussions with him, when I'd done all this research and knew everything about the period, I then took it to him and he said, well, we don't know that because we weren't there. So maybe we can push it a little bit. And so that in itself is really freeing, because you get to be really creative and you can push the boundaries. And really with Yorgos, you can push the boundaries as much as you want to. But it's equally terrifying, because how far do you go without it making it look like you got the period wrong? You have to believe you're in Queen Anne's court, or you can't come away from that. You have to believe in those characters, but to put a twist on it, it's how far to do that, how stylised to be. Queen Anne, to map that out when you started to see her health decline, it was quite kind of, it was how far to go with that, and we had to keep sort of moving that on slowly more and more. And we added the prosthetics when you see them for her leg, her gout leg. But we actually made prosthetics. They were sort of a kind of cruder version that could be put on under stockings, so that Olivia still had that sort of bulk in the leg, and she still had, you're very aware of having something in your leg, so when she walked it was still there. And that was added more and more as we went along in the story, until we get to those very end scenes when, there's a post-stroke. We could do things with the face and with her arm to kind of, show a real deterioration. And her hair was a big thing to map out, because Queen Anne would have people doing her hair for her for particularly sort of court appearances and that kind of thing. But then when she's in her room on her own, we use different hair pieces and three-quarter wigs to give this kind of really wiry sort of, ill hair really, that had no sort of moisture to it. And so we played around with that a lot. With Emma's character, Abigail, when she first turns up to the court, and she's turned up as this young kind of naive girl, and she's got a little straw bonnet on and this cute kind of curly hair. And then as she goes along, the thing is with her is that her status changes so much. So we were able to map that out in her hairstyles, until eventually she gets to where Rachel Weisz's character is, Lady Sarah. And her hair mirrors when we first see Sarah. So she's really kind of changed as she goes along. And then when we get to her having her own party, she's copied the makeup of the ladies in the court, but to a kind of stronger degree as well. So yeah, they were really fun characters to map out. So I chose to use 3/4 length wigs because they basically sit sort of over the temple, which means that the front part of the hair is the actress's own hair. So you're never worried about wig lace. I knew with the style of the film, I knew how we were going to shoot it, I knew with discussions with Yorgos that that would not be an option. He doesn't like lots of checks, he doesn't like lots of interruptions on set. So if you're worried about wig lace, that, you know, it was going to be a nightmare. So, and equally, these characters needed to be really stripped back and really natural. That was definitely a chosen element right in the beginning. So I wanted it to be really natural. So they kind of go temple to temple, and then you can dress the actress's hair into those. So it gives you the length and the amount of hair you need to do up styles, but keeping it natural at the front. We had a lot of wigs in the film, and we think there was probably about 115, something like that. I phoned around at first to find as many as I could, and there's a certain amount in circulation. But then after that, we really started to run out, and when the crowd numbers were going up, we just realised that we weren't going to have enough wigs. And also, the size of the budget and the time that we had, we just weren't in a position to make wigs for all these people. So we'd got one of the wigs and kind of took it apart and figured out how we could make it ourselves. And so my team, particularly my main wig assistant, Anna Morena, she kind of sat and stitched these at home while she was watching TV. And we found these wigs that hadn't been used for about 20 years, and they were like old kind of animals in a box. They looked, and we took them home and washed them in my bath, and they were hanging up in our bathroom. And so yeah, getting the wigs together, the amount of them. And then we'd do things like we would take so the main bulk of the wig sits about here, and then underneath is the ladder, which makes them the long length. So then we'd take off the ladders and change those into maybe palace guards, or there was a continual kind of move around of all the wigs. Right, they're wrapped, we can change them to those, and that, you know, it was a forever kind of process, conveyor belt of wigs going on. They had no makeup on apart from when they're meant to have makeup on. There was a time we put some concealer on under Emma Stone's eyes, and Yorgos spotted it and made me take it off. He really didn't want them to wear makeup, and that at first was really scary because you're so used to doing that, and even when it's a period piece, you want to cheat the skin to make it look good. And even though there's 3 beautiful women there, that everyone needs a little bit of help. So, but he really, really didn't want it. And actually, looking back and watching the film now, it was absolutely the right decision. You needed to see it, and I never think that makeup should be an obstruction or a barrier. And the film is about those characters, and you need to see the sweat, you need to see their skin and kind of feel them. And I think that's such an important part of makeup. Nicholas Hoult didn't know anything about his character's look at all. I think he thought, I've joined this period piece and I might have to wear a wig because it's a period piece, but no idea that Harley was going to look like he looked. So when I first showed him the concept, he said, call my agent, but in a joking way, and then he really got into it. And then the wigs got bigger and bigger, and he named them. There was Barbara and Hattie and Lulu. He was so tall in them, so he'd have to sit down for me to I'm pretty tall, but for me to get that on top of his head. And you'd have to watch him walking around because we shot everything with candlelight. It was either natural light or candlelight. So those ballroom scenes, when you've got a room full of men in wigs, and some of the wigs were sprayed in different colours and that kind of thing, and then candles everywhere. I mean, my team, I think most of the time spent their time just kind of going, watch the wigs, making sure they didn't go up in flames. So, well, the badger, the actual line obviously is in the script. It says, you look like a badger. And I've got a notebook. I always work with a notebook, and I always write down all ideas or things that I need to do, or constantly crossing those out and lists. And that just kept reappearing in my notebook because I didn't know what to do with it. I thought, how do you make someone's makeup look like a badger? I mean, how far do we go with this? And I think it was when I visited the room that we were going to shoot those scenes in. It had a black and white kind of checkerboard floor. And then Sandy Powell, the costume designer, had said that there was going to be a real black and white theme across the courtiers' costumes. So I felt that worked into the badger makeup somehow, and basically what happened was that I sort of established the courtiers, the makeup on the women first, with these black bands across their eyes, these white faces and black bands across their eyes, which is, I've said this now, I think enough time has passed, it's a slight homage to Blade Runner as well, because I love it. The sort of band. And then I thought, oh, maybe that we could do that, something badger-like about that. And the idea is that the Queen has copied a female courtier that she's seen, and but it's done quite badly and quite crudely, and something a bit sort of quite childlike about it, which then really works with the way, obviously, Olivia delivers that. I think I always say the same thing, which I can't stress enough, is that I feel like it's about how much you want this. It is a hard industry to crack into, but once you're into it, it actually feels quite small once you're into it. And I think it's about being available, getting as much work experience as you possibly can, looking at films, looking at TV shows that you really, the makeup really inspires you, or the hair really inspires you, and see who those designers are, and maybe look at if they're a designer that you'd like to work with and offer your services. It's all about getting out and meeting people as well. If I get CVs sent to me, sometimes they're fantastic, but it doesn't show who that person is, and we spend a lot of hours and very early mornings together. It's about teamwork and about the right personality. And as a trainee and as someone coming into it, you're not expected to know everything technically. That's the point. I'm still learning all the time, so I learn off my team all the time. So I think it's about having the right energy. And I also, for me personally, I feel like makeup is quite a small percentage of what I actually do. I think it's about creating a character. I'm a massive film fan and a massive character fan, so if someone is in a position to design something, to get a script, really look at that character, talk to the actor, find the tiniest little details. They make such a difference. Nicholas Hoult, for example, his beauty patches in The Favourite, I found a code that back in the day they all meant something. So they all have meaning where you place them on your face. I think it was kind of like an olden day flirting. So we would sit together and figure out where he was that day with his scene and place him in a particular way. Only me and him know that, but he goes into that scene knowing that. And that, for me, as a designer, is something that is such a small element of the film, but I really believe that you can feel that when you watch something like The Favourite.